Welcome to Complete World War Two, Part 5. So in our previous parts, we covered a brief introduction to war with some final wranglings before September 1st. Part 2, we covered the destruction of Poland. And then in Part 3 and 4, we covered the beginnings of the Winter War between Russia and Finland and some of the other events going on, namely the beginning of the war at sea, the Battle of River Plate, etc., etc. And now we move on to what I call the next phase of the war. Hitler, by this time, had taken Austria. He'd annexed the Sudetenland, then annexed the rest of Czechoslovakia. He'd then destroyed Poland, and partitioned it in agreement with Soviet Russia. So therefore, Hitler on the east had no immediate concerns. He'd kind of taken stock of the situation in the east. He'd dealt with the main threat from the east, initially Poland, who had a large army, albeit militarily stuck in old war terms in terms of thinking. And equipment, and it destroyed Poland. So now another threat had emerged, a threat Hitler was aware of before the beginning of the war, which was the supplies of ore and metals and other things from Norway. And as I've already gone through, Hitler already at the start of 1940 began ordering his military to prepare for an annexation of Norway due to the Allied threat, the British and French threat of shipping, i.e. France and Britain could take Norway's ports, use them as advanced bases, could impose aircraft into Norway, which would be a threat to German shipping, and also it would be a major problem. So after dealing with the issues in the east, Hitler was now turning his thoughts north, onto, at the time, neutral Denmark and neutral Norway. Now, Norway, because of its richness in certain deposits, minerals, ores and things, was a prize target. And Norway, all the way through the war, would still maintain a large German garrison right up until near the end of the war. Germany would never let go of Norway without a fight, showing how important it was, both for materials and supplies, but also due to its strategic positioning. And as I've gone through, Hitler had already gave preparations for what was known as Operation Weserübung, the operation against Norway, Operation North. So on February 26th, now I detailed in last part, the attack on the Altmark, that was a ship, a German ship in Norwegian waters that contained 299 British prisoners, and the Altmark had been attacked and boarded, the British prisoners released. Norway was not very happy with Britain and protested diplomatically against military action being taken in their waters, but this further pushed Hitler on to realise that he had to deal with the northern problem before getting to the real main issue he still had, that of France, who Hitler partially blamed, the UK for the imposition of the vast reparations, the destruction of old German, system with the, just crazy conditions at the Treaty of Versailles. And Hitler inside harboured a bit of a hatred towards France for that, and he wanted France dealing with. And as I've documented, Hitler went through, even in early January 1940, he had his attack plan then. He postponed it once and then put it off indefinitely. But even before end of 1939, Hitler had ordered his military that he wanted to attack Poland, France in January. Now, after this part, of course, part 6, we will go through all the planning and the state and the setup for the war in the West, the attack on France and the Low Countries, and we will go through the rival plans. Then in part 7 we will detail the invasion of France and the Low Countries, but part 6 will be a special part where we'll go through the German planning, the Allied planning, the disposition of forces, how they were dispersed, and the fantastic strategy developed by General Erich von Manstein that kind of turned the fear of another war in the West becoming an entrenched affair into a lightning fast success. But we will cover that in time. But for meanwhile, we have to go through the events of the Norwegian campaign. So, Denmark never gets much of a mention. I do remember, funnily enough, back in the 1990s, probably about 97, 98, I was watching an old World War II documentary. And the two infantry divisions that were sent to annex Denmark, who didn't have much of a military and put up virtually zero resistance, except for these two brave souls at a border crossing, I heard this story, one of those little stories you very hear told, where two Danish soldiers manning a border crossing, okay, manning their border crossing post, saw the advancing German column and, in a little act of patriotism, drew their rifles and started to open fire. Two border guards, two Danish military soldiers decided to open fire at the oncoming column of the German infantry division approaching it. They got some shots off before being ordered to cease fire. But you've got to love that little human element that those two guards at that outpost refused to let the Germans, who would have massacred them inside of 60 seconds if they opened fire and retaliated in numbers, they refused to let them pass without a fight. I just love that story. But anyway, let's get back onto the story of Denmark and Norway. Now, Denmark kind of passes without much incident. Norway is a different kettle of fish because Norway also, with it being a country that had a large sea frontier, large ports, fjords, it was also the first time that the Kriegsmarine, okay, the German Navy, would be given a chance to play a central role in military operations. You know, up to now, the U-boats have been attacking convoy systems and allied warships, but at the moment, you know, the Kriegsmarine as a whole had not been given chance to deploy the bulk of the surface ships and take part in naval manoeuvres in a war setting. So it was really a chance for them to show what they were made of. And in some ways, you know, it put them back 10 steps, okay, but we'll go through that as we go. So we ended on February 26th, okay, Hitler basically did not trust Norwegian neutrality. Now, as I've already said, Norway proclaimed neutrality, but Hitler knew that France and Britain would make moves against Norway to put pressure, you know, on Hitler's Germany and his naval forces being able to move freely. You know, with air bases there and garrisons there, it would have been a bit of a nightmare that have stopped supply of certain minerals and ores that went to Germany that were vital for war effort. So Hitler was never going to let them just take it. And Hitler moved first. The Allies did have plans, but the dilly-dally too long. Hitler jumped the gun. So he signed the directive, okay, for the problem of Norway to be dealt with. And Denmark to be dealt with, so he could control that sea zone much more easily. So on February 27th, okay, this is when Field Marshal Timoshenko, was overrunning the second Finnish defence line, okay. On March 1st, okay, the Soviets put an ultimatum of peace to Finland, okay. The ultimatum was received. On the Western Front, okay, there were a few exchanges of artillery, little patrols meeting each other, but not much of anything, okay. Now, the US Secretary of State, Summer Wells, okay, arrived in Berlin on the 1st of March before going to London and Paris. He'd been instructed by US government to offer American mediation, okay, in search for a peace agreement between the various belligerents. But, you know, basically it's doomed to fail. The Western Allies, you know, will not back down to Hitler anymore after being stabbed in back, namely the UK with Chamberlain in Czechoslovakia. The French are completely resolute now to not back down to Hitler in any way, and Hitler has his mind made up. So basically, there's going to be no mediation that would be any success. So on the 2nd of March, okay, the French Army Information Service, okay, reveals German preparations for an attack on Norway and Denmark, okay. Now, Sweden and Norway repeat their warning that Allied troops and war material may not cross their territory, okay? So both of them are saying, look, you cannot use our territory or our sea zones for waging war. Now, on the 4th of March, okay, Russian armoured troops, okay, attacked the city of Viipuri, now Vyborg, okay, in the USSR, the most important strategic point in Karelia, and indeed the whole the south of Finland. So the Russians are now overrunning the Finns. And on the 5th of March, the USSR announces that it is more prepared okay, now, once more, to negotiate peace terms with the Finns, okay? The Finnish government, though, is under massive pressure and accepts. Now, on 6th of March, okay, a Finnish delegation led by Juho Kuti Paskivi, an experienced politician and diplomat, arrives in Moscow. General Mannerheim, okay, seeing it's useless to continue one-sided struggle, has basically accepted that they must talk to the Soviet Union and accept peace terms because they are now being overrun and can no longer stop the Russian massed armour and infantry attacks. Now, the Western powers continue to offer aid, but, it's of little use now. On March 8th, okay, the Russians take Viipuri. The USSR refuses a Finnish request for an immediate armistice. The Russians want their terms accepting first. On 9th of March, okay, the Finnish army can no longer hold its positions, and General Mannerheim orders the politicians, basically, come to peace terms. And on 12th of March, a peace treaty between Finland and Soviet Union is signed. Okay, the conditions imposed in this peace treaty are basically the Finns must secede the Karelian Isthmus, including Viipuri. They must secede part of eastern Karelia, and in the Rybachi Peninsula in the Barents Sea. Okay, Russia's after ports, Russia's after strategic locations. The terms confirm that the Yanko Peninsula must be leased at USSR for 30 years, and that Russian personnel and materials must be allowed free passage in region of Petsamo, Stricken, and Finland will remain independent, albeit partially overrun. And on 13th of March, all hostilities cease between Finland and Russia at 11 a.m. in the morning. The Finns have lost like 25,000 dead. This is compared to up to 200,000 casualties the Russians suffered. The Finns gave them a bloody nose, but when Timoshenko reorganised and concentrated his attacks, massed infantry and tanks, they did punch through. But the Finns gave them a number of bloody noses in that time. Pretty much, okay, by end of war there, the Russians had, like 50 divisions there, most of them infantry. They had whole armoured formations there of tanks. The Finns never had an army of more than 180, 200,000. The Russian manpower at one point is estimated to have approached 1 million men. So it was really a David and Goliath. And David held out for a time, but they couldn't do it indefinitely. Now on March 18th, okay, Hitler and Mussolini meet at Brennero, okay, on the Brenner Pass. Now, Mussolini declares to Hitler that Italy is ready to join the war against Britain and France, and my goodness, what a bad set of events they have when they do. Now, on March 19th, okay, comes a strong condemnation of the Nazi regime from an official representative at US government. The US ambassador in Canada, James Cromwell, declares that Hitler's Germany is openly trying to destroy the social and economic order on which the government of the USA is based. Okay, so that's a failed attack on Hitler. And as a reprisal on March 19th for the German attack on Scapa Flow, on October 14th, 1939, 50 RAF bombers raid the German seaplane base at Hornum on the Isle of Sylt. Now, on March 20th, Daladier's cabinet in Paris resigns. Paul Renard forms a war government. On 21st of March, okay, the French government orders, consignment of heavy water from Norway to pursue research into atomic technology. Okay. Now, also on this day, a British delegation has a secret meeting with representatives of the Turkish government at Aleppo. So, on the 28th of March, France and Britain conclude a joint undertaking, okay, that neither country will form a separate peace agreement with Germany. So basically, France and Britain tie together and say, France won't make peace with Germany without British approval, and Britain won't make peace with Germany without French approval. They are now tied at the hip, okay? So, by the end of March, okay, German U-boats have now sunk over 750,000 tons of Allied shipping, okay, in the East Atlantic and the shores around Britain and down to the Mediterranean Sea. The Kriegsmarine has lost 18 submarines, and German battleships and cruisers, destroyers have also sunk over 60,000 tons of shipping, and 280,000 tons has been sunk around the coast of Britain by mines laid by submarines, destroyers and aircraft, and 36,000 tons of shipping by air attacks. So absolutely horrifying losses already to the convoy system from the German U-boats, planes and warships. On 2nd of April, okay, Hitler gives orders for the start of Operation Weserübung, okay, against Norway and Denmark. Hostilities are due to begin on April 9th, okay? On April 3rd, okay, Churchill's appointed chairman of the Ministerial Defence Committee and obtains consent, okay, from the British Cabinet to the laying of minefields in Norwegian territorial waters, which Norway was not entirely happy about, in line with decision of the Allied Supreme War Council on March 28th. Okay, now on 5th of April, for technical reasons, the dispatch at first contingent's Allied Expeditionary Force to Norway is postponed until April 8th. And that postponement is a deadly postponement, okay, because by the time the French and British and the Polish regiments and brigades that are due to be deployed in Norway are starting to be deployed, the Germans also move in, so the Allies lose days on Germany there. Now, Chamberlain makes a speech in which he declares Hitler has missed the bus, okay? But sadly, as Chamberlain would find out, he indeed has not missed the bus. On 7th of April, okay, in early hours of morning, German warships sail with the troops who will carry out the first landings in Norway. And on April 7th also, okay, first contingents Allied Expeditionary Force to Norway embarked in cruisers of the Royal Navy. You know, towards the evening of April the 7th, the British fleet leaves Scapa Flow for the Norwegian coast to intercept German naval formations. You know, at this point, the Royal Navy is still the most powerful navy in the world, okay? And during the night of April 7th, okay, British destroyers lay 3 minefields in Norwegian territorial waters. Now, on April 8th, okay, the Allies inform Norway, okay, of the mine-laying operations in Norwegian waters. So they lay the mines, then tell the Norwegians, by the way, we've actually laid mines in your waters. Good job, Norwegian ships hit them in night. On April 8th, okay, the Allies, 11:50 a.m., German ship Rio de Janeiro, converted into a troop transport, is torpedoed by Polish submarine Orzel off the Norwegian coast near Lillesand. The Germans are picked up by an Allied ship, and this makes it clear the German invasion force is already at sea. The Norwegian government still does not order general mobilization. So even though, okay, the Rio de Janeiro, a German troop ship, has been attacked, the Norwegians do not order general mobilization, so their military is still on peace footing, even though the Germans are now heading right for their shores and bases. Now, it does make clear that the Germans are already at sea. The Norwegian government will not declare that, and during an evening meeting at Council of Ministers, the Chief of Staff at Army General Rasmus Hartedal informs the Defence Ministry that all officers at General Staff have taken up their posts. They decide on secret mobilisation of 5 brigades in southern Norway in preparation. Now, on the 9th of April, okay, the German invasion begins. The expeditionary force consists of 7 infantry divisions and 2 mountain divisions, with an air arm of over 400 fighter aircraft, 70 reconnaissance planes, and 500 air transports, which will be vital, okay, for Germans to take air bases so then they can fly in additional equipment and supplies. You know, the entire German Navy takes part in this operation. Like I said, this was a chance for Kriegsmarine to actively play a major campaign in World War II, and it was the last major campaign for the most part. The Army of Occupation divided into 7 formations, 2 commanded by General Kaupich, invade Denmark and take it in 48 hours. Okay, basically, you know, the Germans arrive in Copenhagen 12 hours later. Denmark is just annexed. The other 5 land in Norway, okay, at set locations including Trondheim, Narvik, and Oslo. Okay, in course at landing operations, the Germans lose the heavy cruiser Blucher off Oslo and 2 light cruisers, the Karzul at Kristiansand and the Königsberg off Bergen. Okay, with news of the German attack on Denmark and Norway, the British and French seek permission for their troops to enter Belgium, okay, because they're now thinking he's going for Denmark and Norway. We are next. We need to start getting ready in the west. But Belgium refuses them entry. So on 10th of April, okay, Denmark accepts the German ultimatum and effectively surrenders without virtually so much as a fight. Now, King Haakon of Norway, you know, repudiates the puppet government of Vidkun Quisling. And in Norway, okay, a British flotilla commanded by General Waterburn Lee surprises 10 German destroyers in Narvik Fjord, sinks 2, but loses 2 of its own ships. On April 11th, okay, the Commander-in-Chief at Norwegian Army, Major General Lackey, resigns, and General Otto Ruge is appointed in his place. The Belgian Army on April 11th also cancel all leave for military forces in Denmark. Now, on 13th of April, okay, there's a second Battle of Narvik, and in this one, 7 German destroyers are sunk. So the Germans, already in 2 battles in the port of Narvik and the fjords, have already lost 9 surface ships. You know, the RAF is still king there. Now, okay, and the British government also on April 13th, okay, gives a new directive to edit RAF's bomber command, Sir Charles Portal. In the event of a German invasion of Belgium and Holland, okay, bombing targets are to be troop concentrations and lines of communication and installations in the Ruhr, okay, which is the German industrial region, the main German industrial region. Heavy bombers will operate and will be sent out at night. And on 15th to 16th of April, okay, the first Allied contingents land near Narvik. So the German army, okay, has now begun operations. They have had 2 battles in the in the fjords of Narvik, and have lost 9 surface ships. The second one, a heavy defeat. Okay, but the German attack, okay, was not really as large as in Poland. You know, it required a smaller force. So the 2 army corps, okay, the 21st and the 31st Army Corps for Denmark, okay, contained 2 mountain divisions, which were to be sent to Norway, and the 170th and 198th German infantry divisions would occupy Denmark, while the 69th, 163rd, 181st, 196th and 214th infantry divisions would also take part in the attack on Norway. And as detailed, okay, they had over 400 aircraft, they have 70 floating planes, reconnaissance planes, and they had 500 Junkers Ju-52 3-engine transports. So every serviceable warship, okay, and supply ship in the German Navy was committed to the Norwegian campaign. You know, it basically was an all-out, okay. The Kriegsmarine were happy that they would get a chance to, you know, show what they were made of. Now, there were 5 primary targets for invasion. The Narvik group, okay, contained 10 destroyers, and in the 2 battles in Narvik, they've obviously lost most of those, carrying the 139th Regiment. Trondheim group, okay, containing the heavy cruiser Hipper and 4 destroyers, carrying the 138th Regiment. The Bergen group, which had support from the light cruisers Köln and Königsberg, and the gunnery training ship Bremse, the depot ship Karl Peters, and 2 torpedo boats carried 2 battalions of the 69th Division. At Kristiansand, okay, Arendal group, they had the light cruiser Karlsruhe, the depot ship Tsingtau, and 3 torpedo boats carrying 1 battalion at 310th Regiment. And the Oslo group, okay, the pocket battleship Lutzow, which of course had been renamed from the Deutschland, as I explained in Battle of River Plate video. The Lutzow took part in that, and it was carrying 3 Lutzow, the heavy cruiser Butchler, and the light cruiser Emden, and it had, I was going to say, 3 torpedo boats carrying 2 battalions at 163rd Division. So on April 9th, okay, the Germans came into Norway. They hit at multiple points through Norway, you know, and made rapid progress. Now, obviously, the Allied Expeditionary Forces, including, you know, British troops, etc., had also planned, okay, to also go in and secure Norway, but that delay was vital. Now, the 7th, okay, on the evening of the 7th, okay, Sir Charles Forbes, Admiral of the home UK fleet, sailed from Scapa Flow, and his total amounted to 2 battleships. He had 1 battle cruiser, 4 cruisers, and 21 destroyers. You know, they headed northeast, you know, as fast as they could to try and intercept some of these fjords and ports and secure them, but it didn't quite go that well. Now, at 9 o'clock in the morning on the 8th, okay, the British destroyer Glowworm, which had been one of the destroyers escorting renown during the mine-laying operations, ran head-on into the Hipper off Trondheim and came under heavy gunfire. Battered and burning, the Glowworm heroically rammed the Hipper, okay, and managed before sinking to send out a warning that the Germans were at sea. So basically, the Glowworm, the British destroyer, came across the Hipper. There was an exchange of gunfire. The the Glowworm were taking heavy damage, and thus they decided to ram the German ship Hipper before being sunk. Okay, now the British Admiralty reacted with a series of badly thought out orders. The aircraft carrier Furious was packed off to sea so quickly she had no time to embark a fighter group. Okay, at Rosyth, okay, cruisers which had taken on troops destined for Narvik, Trondheim, Bergen, and Stavanger were ordered to disembark the soldiers and rejoin the home fleet. Admiral Forbes, okay, who could have entered Trondheim on the heels of Germans, was told that his main task must be to intercept the Scharnhorst Scharnost and the Gneisenau, okay, 2 German pocket battleships. Now, the Scharnost and Gneisenau were operating as a battle squadron, okay, independent of the German fleet, and their job was to intercept and destroy Allied shipping. The Scharnost and Gneisenau are ships I will cover on my ship statistic video, so you can see the stats for those. Now, at the mouth of the Westfjord, okay, which leads to Narvik, okay, Captain B.A.W. Warburton Lee, commanding British 2nd Destroyer Flotilla, were quick to take the initiative, okay. On dawn on April 10th, he sailed up the ford and surprised the Germans. He caught them out, which had taken the Narvik on the previous day, April 9th. Now, in the ensuing fight, okay, both Warburton Lee and Bonte were killed. Both sides lost 2 destroyers, okay, but 3 of the German destroyers had been damaged, and as they retreated down the fjord, the British ships torpedoed and sank the merchant ship Rauenfels, which had been bringing ammunition for Dietl's troops. On 13th, okay, a destroyer flotilla led by the battleship Warspite, flying the flag of Vice Admiral W.J. Whitworth, crowned Warburton Lee's success by destroying the German destroyers which had survived the first battle, okay. And Churchill explained this confounded corridor as being shut forever. Basically, the British ships took the initiative, went into the fjords of Narvik, and effectively destroyed the German destroyer group. That was there. Now, on morning at 15th, okay, the British 24th Guards Brigade was landed at Harstad on island of Hinnoy, some 60 miles from Narvik, separated from port by a sea channel and a mountain range covered in snow. There were no chance of a rapid pounce on Narvik due to the terrain and the difficulties of getting there. Now, in Narvik, okay, Dietl profited by delay, enlisting 2,600 survivors from Bonte's destroyer flotilla, okay, from the naval officers and soldiers on the destroyer flotilla, and he formed 5 battalions of mountain marines. So he got them men, gave them armaments. He had thousands of rifles and hundreds of machine guns, some taken from the Norwegian bases at Narvik, some he had on him. So he armed 5 mountain brigades. And on April 15th, 16th, the 146th Brigade landed at Namsos, okay, and the 148th Brigade landed at Andelsens. It was hoped that these 2 forces would take Trondheim by a converging attack and join forces to link up with Norwegian forces retreating northwards along the Osterdal valleys. But in the meantime, General von Falkenhorst had received considerable reinforcements both by air and sea, despite the Allied submarines in operation. The 181st Division had reinforced the 2nd Division at Trondheim, while the 196th Division had landed at Oslo and was at Falkenhorst's immediate disposal for operations in central Norway. So basically, the British troops in Norway were not equipped for mountain fighting. They hadn't been properly prepared, and thus struggled. On 26th of April, okay, German 196th Division, the right-hand column of the 21st Corps in the Osterdale, joined forces with German 181st Division south of Trondheim. And complete mastery of the air was owned by the Luftwaffe, okay. The bombers of the 10th Flieger Corps harried and attacked movements of Allied troops, attacking the positions, attacking the depots, and caused all kinds of mayhem. Under these circumstances, the Allied Supreme War Council, which met on April 26, decided to abandon central Norway and concentrate all available forces against Järvik. King Haakon and General Rouge, despite this decision, were determined to fight on and took ship for Tromsø together with the government and the gold reserves of Norway. See, the country's been invaded, but the one thing they do make sure to get is their gold. Now at Narvik, okay, the French-British evacuation of Namsos and the Andelsens had been completed by May 3rd, but the plan to take Narvik remained unfaltered. The objective, though, was no longer to save all of Norway. They were now deciding to blockade the ports and thus stop the iron routes. The command of all these land forces, okay, was earmarked to Lieutenant General Claude Auchinleck, who had replaced Major General Mackenzie. Now, basically, the commander, okay, General Marie-Emile Bethuart of the 1st Chasseur Light Division, disembarked in Narvik sector between April 28th and May 7th. The division included a number of French brigades and also a Carpathian Chasseur Demi-Polish brigade, basically made up by troops who had survived the attack on Poland. Now, the Battle of Narvik, okay, basically had 13 Allied battalions and 10 German battalions. On May 13th, General Bethouat pushed forward the 27th Demi Brigade from Elven, okay, to join up with the Legion forces landed at Björkvik. The Legionnaires had been landed under covering fire of the battleship Resolution and cruisers Effingham and Vindictive with 5 destroyers who'd given a land bombardment prior to them landing, and then they landed infantry and tank landing craft, much easier with that naval bombardment. Now, a few days later, the Polish forces, okay, under General Sisko, relieved the French troops holding the ridge at Ankens, which dominated the port of Narvik. The road to Narvik was open, but at this very moment, okay, General Bethouat, making his final preparations for assault, he received the order to re-embark. So basically, he was ready to attack Narvik, and basically was ordered to stand down. On May 28th, the 13th Foreign Legion Demi Brigade, reinforced by Norwegian 6th Division, finally captured Narvik. They were helped in their attack by the Carpathian Chasseurs, who assaulted the German flank. Now, Dietl's force, okay, lost 10 field guns, and they lost a number of machine gun positions, blah, 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 blah. So basically, the Allies did have some successes. The 25,000 men at Franco-Polish British Expeditionary Force, meanwhile, which had been re-embarked, landed in Scotland. Now, during this entire Norwegian campaign, the Wehrmacht had lost nearly 6,000 troops, okay? British casualties totaled about 1,300. Norwegian casualties, 1,300. British, like 1,900. And Franco-Polish, they'd lost nearly 600 casualties. But okay, General Admiral Raeder, okay, he'd ordered a naval sweep to attack Allied supply ships around Harstad. Now, the German squadron consisted of the Scharnhorst, the Gneisenau, the heavy cruiser Hipper, escorted by 4 destroyers. But when his force reached the latitude of Yarvik, German Fleet Commander Vice Admiral Wilhelm Marschall took it upon himself to ignore his orders and decided to try and destroy the Allied shipping, completing the withdrawal from Norway. So the German ships came across the Allied ships, leaving Norway, and he decided, oh, no, you don't, and decided to attack. He spared the hospital ship Atlantis, which in turn acknowledged the conventions by declining to send out warning signals that the Germans were there. And on the morning of June 8th, he sank a tanker and the troop ship Arama. Several hours later, Marshall scored his greatest success. He surprised the ancient British aircraft carrier Glorious, which was escorted by only 2 destroyers. Opening fire at 28,000 yards, the Scharnhorst and the Gneisenau landed hits with their first volley of salvos and set Glorious ablaze, inflicting heavy damage. The destroyers Acasta and Ardent made a heroic attempt to hold off the German battlecruisers, but they were overwhelmed and sunk in turn. And before she sank, the Acosta launched a torpedo against Scharnhorst, which damaged her severely, killing nearly 50 of her crew. Now, British losses in this action alone were over 1,500, and only 40 lives were saved. Now, the crippling at Scharnhorst, okay, ended the venture. Hipper had already been sent off to Trondheim to refuel, and Scharnhorst limped away following her. But Admiral Marshall was severely criticised by Raeder for not sticking to his orders and was replaced by Fleet Commander Gunther Lutjens. The Gneisenau were detached to operate independently and cover Scharnhorst's retreat. But on June 23rd, she was so badly damaged by a torpedo from British submarine Clyde that she was put completely out of operation for the next 6 months. Now, thus pretty much ended the Norwegian campaign. It was a very quick campaign. There was some, fighting between positions. Not a major campaign, but it was more about, taking the forts, taking the ports, taking the country to a point where it did not interrupt German supplies. Now, it had been a massive German success. In less than 2 months, they'd taken Norway and Denmark, but the German Navy had lost 3 cruisers and 10 destroyers. 2 battle cruisers and 3 of the cruisers were dockyard cases, so they were heavily damaged. So that basically meant from the invasion of Norway that the German Navy could no longer take a large active role in the war. So let us go on before we finish this part, okay, of the war. Now, on April 17th, other additional points, the British cruiser Suffolk shells Solar Airfield near Stavanger. Attacked and severely damaged by German aircraft, the Suffolk manages to return to the British base at Scapa Flow. April 19th, British troops land at Andelsees. On April 20th, French troops land. The Germans make contact with the Norwegian defence lines in front of Lillehammer, Rena and Amot. And on 21st of April, the German advance is continuing in pretty much all areas. On 22nd of April, the Germans press northward with 2 columns along the rivers Rena and Glomma, and during the afternoon, German units attack in the Baalberg camp sector a few miles north of Lillehammer. On 24th of April, the Germans advance on all fronts. The British attempt to reach Trondheim but fail. Now, the French Premier, Paul Renard, on April 24th, also reached out to Mussolini, urging him not to join the war. The last thing the Allies need is Italy, with territories in Africa and bases around the Mediterranean. The last thing they need is them going to war and causing all mayhem there. Now, on April 27th, Hitler tells General Keitel, Commander-in-Chief of Armed Forces, and General Jodl, Chief of Staff of the Supreme Command of the Wehrmacht, that he intends to launch his offensive against France in the first week of May. Now, 28th of April, an attempt by Allied 15th Brigade under General Sir Bernard Paget to advance on Gundersdalen from Trondheim fails. General Paget tells the Norwegian Commander-in-Chief, General Otto Rouge, that withdrawal from central Norway is inevitable. On April 30th, the German troops advancing from Oslo and Trondheim join up at Dombay. On the 1st of May, the Germans announced the surrender of 4,000 Norwegian soldiers in the Lillehammer sector. Now, President Roosevelt, of the USA, on 1st of May, sends a personal message to Mussolini, strongly urging him not to enter the war. Now, on May 1st, another thing we'll go through, big topic we'll go through. The French military attaché in Bern sends a report to Paris. The Germans will open a major offensive between 8th and 10th of May, with the main thrust towards the Sedan region. Now, on 2nd of May, the Germans reach Andelsees. Allied forces embark at Namsos. On 5th of May, the German advance north of Trondheim, and Norwegian ministers start arriving in London from their fallen government and country. On 7th of May, in House of Commons, Chamberlain makes a statement on Norway. The government is supported by 281 votes to 200, a sufficient opposition to make Chamberlain's resignation inevitable. And on the 8th of May, the Belgian ambassador in Berlin, Jacques Davigon, reports that the Germans are drafting an ultimatum for the Belgian government. At the same time, the military attaché in Belgian embassy in Berlin tells his superiors that German Supreme Command has sent their troops the invasion order. And 9th of May is officially the eve of the attack in the West on the Western powers. We will go through all of that. We will go through the planning. We will go through the whole thing. So basically, people, let's go on a little bit longer now. We're going past the invasion of the West, but I will go back to cover that in much more fine detail. Now, on 11th of May, Churchill authorises Bomber Command to carry out raids on Germany, and a British war cabinet is formed. This is 11th of May. On the 11th of May, Roosevelt tells King Leopold III of the dismay and indignation felt by the Americans at the German assault. Of course, we will go through that in stronger detail to come. So pretty much ends the invasion of Norway, some sporadic activity, but with that final naval encounter, between the Gneisenau and the Scharnhorst and their heavy cruisers and destroyers, ends the Norwegian campaign. The Norwegian campaign was fought in a way more of movement, securing territory, not much of pitched land battles. There were engagements here or there, but pretty much to me, the Allied planning was weak. That 3-day delay to where they would not delay from the 5th of April, they would then delay on the 8th, and the Germans had already sent orders out. Their operations began on 9th, gave the Allies no time to take stock at the situation and to react to the German landings. And pretty much, from sporadic fighting here or there, it was realised by the Allied command they weren't going to be able to do anything in Norway, and thus re-embarked the soldiers, landed in Scotland. And pretty much the whole operation was a failure, for the most part. The only real caveat from the Norwegian campaign was the damage to the German Navy, Like it said, they had suffered heavy losses to their cruisers, destroyers, and battle cruisers, and they never really recovered from that. Germany for a time, would carry on the war at sea with the U-boat threat. And of course, we'll go through the incident of the Bismarck when we get to that and the hunt for the Bismarck. But pretty much it affected the Kriegsmarine's hopes of playing an active, large-scale role in the war at sea. So that ends part 5, okay, of my complete World War II. Now, in part 6 is going to be a special part. We are going to go in fine detail through the French plans, the British plans, the negotiations between the two, trying to come up with a general plan. You know, how Belgium and Holland, the Low Countries, thought of this, German plans and counter plans. We will go through all the planning in part 6 of my complete World War II, and then in part 7 we will go into the invasion of the West. Okay, Hitler's took care of the East. He's now, with Poland, Czechoslovakia, Austria, he's now taking care of his sea bases and naval ports and shipping, you know, in the German Sea, and secured that area with the annexation of Denmark and the successful, very successful campaign, albeit naval losses in Norway. So now Hitler has no worries in the East and concentrates his full power now on the old enemies, the UK and France in the West. We will go through that. So that is the end of part 5 of my complete World War II. I'm still in 1940, early 1940. How many parts this will go on to, 40, 50, 60, 70, who knows. But coming next, preparations are laid. The forces are assembled for the attack on France and the Low Countries. I will catch you in part 6 in a number of days' time. I'm out for now.